Welcome to Soul Coffee, the podcast tailored to cultivating the mental health of the Black and Hispanic healthcare professional. I am your host, Dr. Jamal Fruster, a functional movement-based chiropractor out here in Tucson, Arizona. And I'm also a mentor and a life coach for chief medical officers, nurses, functional medicine doctors, medical doctors, and rekindling the spirit of the healthcare professionals so that way they can have the space to provide as I love to provide for the provider. This episode, I'm bringing on Ray Hillsman, our acupuncturist over at the Source Tucson, as he's been a grounding, ancient force, as I want y'all to be able to absorb the principles and the energetics of. We're going to dive into a conversation on the concept of nihilism and how our environment as a species, our environment as a United States or as a country has allowed for this poison to drip into the minds and in the spirits of the individuals, and especially in the healthcare professionals, disconnecting them from their purpose and principles of nature and morality. So I want y'all to be able to really appreciate and have a better understanding of how, when you understand this concept, you can understand how this is like a roundup or a pesticide to, you growing your crops of a delicious, organic, authentic, juicy life experience. So welcome to the show, y'all. Ray Hillsman.
Such an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ray has studied shamanic arts or circles for the last several years, as he's been around in this Eastern philosophy, as well as he's studied acupuncture, and he graduated from the Arizona School of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine. But he's been familiar with his work for about a decade, and if not more, and he's also a Qigong practitioner. And in once more studying his ancient philosophy and technology, I think it's important to recognize how that can be applied in our modern day life, as it's an ancient philosophical application, but in a modern world. So that's super important. And I think a lot of people can relate to this, and that's the struggle to even just get through the day-to-day as a healthcare professional, as there's such a great demand on the mind, on the body, and on the soul. And why do you think that is, Ray?
Well, we live in a demanding world. And I think the modern world has become far more complicated in ways that we don't always realize or acknowledge in our day-to-day life. For instance, you go back 100 years ago, what was the level of complication in the average person's life? Like, let's say maybe even before they had cars, right? A lot of people, they did manual labor. Maybe they worked on a farm. Maybe they, made shoes for a living, whatever it might have been. But the level of things that they had to manage in their life was far, far less.
Yes.
They didn't have to think about technology and smartphones and driving and multiple jobs and, all the complicated bills and systems and things that we have to deal with in the modern world today. So I don't think we acknowledge all the time the level of complexity we have to deal with. And then you add into that social crises and issues that arise in people's lives that we have not implemented the infrastructure to deal with as a society. We want to get into the past couple of years and the way that COVID has looked and the kind of things that have happened around that. That's, a quintessential example. So the question of why are people facing, I think, such burnout, something like that, we have to look at the way a picture of an entire person's life looks. Is a person's needs being met as a human being? Because we have far more than just the basic physical needs. We all know that, right? I don't have to sell anybody on that idea. But the thing is there's far more to who we are than we even have words for, or that we're really talking about in the modern world. And that, you mentioned all the ancient arts I've studied, and I've had an interesting career path, because if I want to put it in a nutshell, it really is taking all of the knowledge and wisdom I can find of the ancient world and translating that into medicines that can be beneficial to the people alive today. And that's something that we don't really have a lot of in modernity, right, in the world today. It's just like we don't have much of a connection to the idea of the ancient. And there's kind of this story that I don't believe in that says that, well, we've just progressed from that. We've rediscovered things or discovered things, and the ancient world is no longer relevant, right? This is something we hear a lot of. I don't believe that's true. Because our ancestors were dealing with human issues. they found solutions to deal with these problems, whether it's health problems, social construction. And you just read the stories and the myths and the poetry of people that lived thousands of years ago, and you realize they were human beings like us. And there's a great deal of power and advantage, solutions that we can draw from if we open our camera a little bit and look at a wider picture, a broader picture of human beings over time. So that's why I draw a lot from, and I talk a lot about the ancient world. I talk a lot about mythology and stories that have been passed down over time. And so bringing this back to the question, it's like, why is this relevant? It's because people today are living in a very imbalanced way. In the ancient world, we lived in tribes. We lived in ways with other people that we had a good way with one another. That was part of what was passed down. That's really part of the medicine more than anything else. And a lot of that's been lost. A lot of that's been lost with a lot of other things and mental baggage and programming that we're seeing by the channels of media that exist in the world today. That's taken people down a road where we're not fulfilling those needs, where we're not being empowered, and we're dealing with a life that's so complex that it's like every waking moment of the day, we're always doing something. Like, how many people check their phone first thing in the morning, and then their mind is preoccupied by little details and distractions for the whole course of the day until they crash at night.
Emphasis on crash, and I like the idea of there has been added complexity, because at the core root of things don't need to be complex as a human. You examine Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Tony Robbins established, amount of needs, nonviolent communication. Dr. Marshall Rosenberg. There is this need of fulfillment, actualization, autonomy, but at the core essence, I think, of being a human is community, and it's making sure your biological needs get met, and even those have been compromised.
Agreed.
With the food, quality of water, quality of air. Those three basic tenets have been compromised intentionally by external forces or forces that are moving outside or out of alignment with just the common want for humans to thrive. And I think if our basic needs are being compromised, well, then, of course, as you ascend up the ladder, there's going to be so much more complexity for the intention of confusion. We talked about this in an episode with Dr. Brett Jones in the past, and revisited that concept as, if people are confused, that's going to, one, waste energy, and two, it's going to lead to lack of action or action that's already predetermined.
Yes, absolutely.
Because people seek ease, just as nature seeks ease.
Right, and that's an important thing. And I mean, this is understanding the way that human beings in our psyche operate. And, I have a certain way of thinking about this, right? I think there's this saying, too, that's like, no pain, no gain. I don't believe that.
Yes.
But there's a spectrum here of different things. And I break it into 4 areas. There's pleasure, comfort, discomfort, and pain. We're pleasure-seeking creatures. We're supposed to be. So we seek that ease. We seek those things we enjoy, the things we want. And the problem is when we end up in a society that is so complicated and that has actually made it harder to meet those needs, sometimes we don't end up finding that thing. So we settle for comfort. And it becomes that seeking the ease. And it's just like, oh, I got done with a hard day of work, and I just get to pop a beer and like watch TV and go to bed. And it's like, it's a state of numbness almost, but it's comfortable. And then there's, on the other side of that spectrum, there's discomfort and there's pain. And I think where the cliche of no pain, no gain gets wrong is pain is actually the point to stop and reevaluate. Because we make our growth actually in the area of discomfort more than anything else. And discomfort and pain, they're not the same thing.
No.
So I think, while this is a spectrum, it's valuable to know where a person is on the spectrum and where a person can get stuck. Because like you said, people pursue ease, and that's a normal human experience. It's like, yeah, let's know that about the psyche. But people also will get stuck in that area of comfort. It's just comfortable to keep doing the same thing. Where discomfort is a place of new things. Things are going to change. Things are being shaken up. It's not comfortable. It's not the same as pain. So it's kind of knowing where we're at and being able to navigate that where we want to go, I think, is a part of this conversation.
I love the idea of pain being an opportunity to slow down, reevaluate things. As if you stay in a state of discomfort or even pain and you don't come home to integrate, I talk about this in four levels of discomfort or uncomfortability. I like uncomfortability better than discomfort.
Sure.
Or discomfortability. But this is important to be able to learn how to traverse. And I think one thing that's important with people is to be able to give them fuel to travel through things, travel through life, is to have, potent fuel, potent gas tank. And I found that to be your purpose. And one thing that you said in, previous discussion is participation is intelligent.
Yeah.
And I love that because there's 4 signs of life: excretion, assimilation, reproduction, adaptation, and growth. Excuse me, there's 5. I think that there's a 6th one as we study in chiropractic philosophy, and that's recognition. So me being able to recognize just you in general is a sign that something's alive, because it's doing something inside of me. But participation, I think, isn't being intelligent. I love that because when something is intelligent, there's a reorganization of things. There's reconstruction of things. It's working to become more efficient because it is intelligent. It can recognize, and it's taking things in, it's letting things go, and it's allowing for different thought forms or patterns to continue to be reproduced that are sustainable. It's growing and it's adapting.
Yes.
But participation in life is necessary, because if you are not participating in life, then once more, you are going to be just a debris or a piece of stick that's just taking you where life is going, versus actively determining that in where you want to go on the day-to-day, let alone on the macro scale of your life.
Yeah, because what kind of choice is that? Like, who wants to be a stick? Who wants to be a rock? This is the thing. Like, we can talk about this like it's a choice, right? Because we want to be amiable and like give people a choice. But really, at the end of the day, what kind of choice is that? It's like, you're here. As long as you're going to hear, why don't you participate? It's like, I don't see any other choice in this when you become highly aware of it. It's like, as long as you're in the game, we have the ability to choose to play the game to the highest extent that we can towards the goals that matter to us. Or you can give up. It's like, is that really even a choice?
Why are you giving up? Like, what happened to your will? You also said something far as a broken will is easy to control and influence.
Very.
So if you sap someone or you bleed someone of their will or their purpose or their power, then of course, fuck it, I'll just be a stick.
Well, that's why all the structures of the world today, the modern world, the power structures that it's built behind, it's the governments, the economic structures, they want to break people's will. Like, that's a reality people don't want to hear. They want to break people's will, and they want to confuse people. And there's a couple of reasons why. Should I dive into that?
Of course.
Okay. So when it comes to, let's talk about the topic of confusion first, and then get back to will. When there's so many mixed messages and different information, and now in the modern world, it's like postmodern, right? And it's like up is down, left is right, cat can be a dog, whatever can be a whatever. It's like everything's just conceptual. It's like this whole thing. What happens when we, as discerning, intelligent creatures, encounter this ecosystem that's 100% confusing? What ends up happening is that there's no way to orient ourselves. It's a complete like morass of a fog that we can't navigate because there's nothing to it. And the problem is as intelligent beings, we're looking for meaning. And I'll tell you something that maybe you did not know about me. I have training also as a hypnotist.
Huh.
I did the Mike Mandel School of Hypnosis online. It's a good online academy as far as I'm concerned. And one of the things they'll talk about is this idea that if you confuse somebody, is one of the main ways to bypass their intellectual barriers to receiving hypnotic suggestion. And what that means is that when you confuse someone, they're more open to receiving direct commands that will tell them what to do. And here's why. Because a human being that is in a state where the mind is confused is automatically in a place where they're looking for answers. And so they'll be more open to receiving a direct suggestion. So some hypnotists, what they'll do is they'll do something to confuse people, and then give them a direct suggestion afterwards. Well, it's like you go up to somebody on the street, if their intellectual defenses are high, they're not going to tell them to sit down, they're not going to do it. You confuse the hell out of somebody, tell them to sit down, they're looking for the answer. The modern world wants to confuse you because it wants to tell you what to do and have you obey. There's a mob mentality out there. Their logic is confusing. It's illogical. There is no logic to it. But there's a consistency in the sense that they want to be able to tell people what to do and have you follow along. It's authoritarianism is really what it is. Along with that, as we're getting back to your topic about breaking down people's will, it's a gradual process. A small child, a 2-year-old, has a lot of willpower. We see that all the time, anytime you see a little kid, right? But what's the problem is every single social institution, from the school system, it's obedience, training, authoritarianism, family systems, work systems, etc. And you add in that element of we're bombarded by information constantly.
So much information.
And it ends up being, like this inundation with belief systems, really, I guess, that are kind of weaving their way through even just things people would consume for fun. It ends up in some way creating this internal ecosystem that breaks down people's willpower. I can't describe exactly how that happens, but we see the effects of that in people regularly, constantly in the world today.
I mean, I think you already have. When someone's in a state of confusion, they're more susceptible to direct commands because their brain is trying to find an answer for survival. Yes. Because when it's confused, it's like, like think when like bright lights come on or flashbang or insert stimulus here for stress. That can confuse people because they may not know what to do. And they may not know what to do, or they might be susceptible to being confused due to lack of principle, lack of awareness, stress state already. So they're already in a predisposed stress state. And that's going to make them more susceptible to what life might suggest for them, or these external forces might suggest for them. And think about, COVID, or you think about just the concept of health. That's the main thing that connects us as humans. We all have these bodies and we all have a status of health. If we rob someone of their mental health, or which is intangible, and it's this concept that's hard to understand, and you put them in a state of confusion, well then of course their body's going to follow whatever it is that their confused mind is trying to figure out. Yeah. And this is so important because when it comes to health, there are very basic principles in alignment with nature. Movement, breathwork, meditation, yes, presence, recuperation, and nourishment. And if you don't stick or take care of these principles first, and you're worried about the outside in, because that's where you get your answers, or that's what you rely upon, or that's what you've found safety in, versus finding safety in yourself, let alone when you're navigating through a day-to-day and you're trying to navigate a lot of interactions as a healthcare professional, and you're dealing with so many humans in a construct, whether it be a hospital, that's so many external pressures on you, opinions on you, intentions on you, or other wills that are acting upon you, that if you don't have the boundaries to navigate, the clarity to navigate, the routines to ground back in to navigate and wipe your windshield at the end of the day and during the day, well then of course you're going to be driving in an unsustainable way to a destination that you didn't even put in your own GPS.
Yeah, that's really well said.
Nice.
And, I think you nailed it. Fear is one of the main ways in which willpower is broken. And the modern world is terrifying. Like that's the thing too that we get swept up in the complexity of the world, is that there's a constant states of anxiety and fear that are generated as part of this, destruction of the human and breaking down of people's willpower. Because the more you keep people in that state of fear, because let's take it back to that Maslow's hierarchy idea, right? Like you mentioned, health. Health is one of the most basic needs. You need that really to be able to go do anything else. So if people's health is threatened and their physical basic needs, food, water, shelter, because, we see the way housing is going in countries like this, all those things are being threatened. People are in this constant state of fear. And the adrenaline is always spiked, cortisol is always spiked, whatever it is. In that mode, it's difficult to operate from other areas of people's being. And so they're not becoming actualized in other ways, and it's much easier to control people who are in a chronic state of fear and exhaustion from fear.
Because the exhaustion, then they become, well, of course I work a 12-hour shift.
Right.
And you throw in the construct, well, this is how it's always been. Why? I think we talked about this in Dr. Bo's episode. Challenging, especially as healthcare professionals, the way things have always been. I'll say this, as a Black and Hispanic man, hearing that statement in various institutions and ways, I'll say it can be triggering, but it just, I have an acute perspective on it. If that's the things have always been, well, things aren't fucking working right now. So why would we even bother continue to do those things that aren't working? That doesn't make sense. That's not sustainable unless it's through someone else's intentions, because clearly their intentions are manifesting. Like, yeah, no, let's keep doing this. And if people don't have the thought capacity, the mental bandwidth to navigate and think about things for themselves because they're not exhausted, they're not depleted, well, then they have the wherewithal, or they have the breath about them, they have the surplus of energy to actually then start examining, one, and then two, efforting to challenge, and then three, efforting to shift things into a more sustainable way, whether we shift the system as it is right now or we create our own.
Right. If I could add one thing to that too, I think this idea that things have always been this way is part of the illusion that people have created to break people's willpower, because historically speaking, it's really not true. Human beings have evolved and changed and gone back and forth through many different states of being and many different states of life. I mean, you go back 10,000 years ago or so, or longer than that, we were all hunter-gatherers. We had a very different way of life. And then they invented agriculture, changed the game. Human beings started living in a different way. And gradually, the process of industrialization and such, we've had different eras of life. But throughout, the thousands of years, 'cause I'm bringing it back to the ancient world, that's the kind of thing I talk about.
Dude.
Yeah, through the thousands of years, people have lived in very different ways. There have been golden ages on this earth. That's something people don't realize. There have been times in various countries and places where there was no war, where people focused on learning and art. And, there was prosperity. I mean, there's things people don't know about it. It's like, do you know, in Central Africa, the Empire of Mali was once the wealthiest place on earth. Most people don't know that. There's all kinds of different eras of time in history where people had tremendous abundance and lived a different way of life. So when we hear this idea, and I know where it comes from because I've felt that same way. It's like, well, things have always been this way. It's like, well, Dad did those things that way. Grandpa did things that way. They haven't always been that way. Nature is full of change. It's full of flow. And so when we ride that flow and we can get into our own state of power, we will change things to be different. Because there's no keeping things the way they are when people are this unhealthy and when things are this broken. It's like either things will collapse in a way that's very, very nasty and unconscious, or we become conscious and more aware to create the future that we want to live in. And I think you know what my answer is.
I have an idea.
Yeah.
Hey guys, we're taking the first break ever in Soul Coffee, and it's for some important shit. If this is you, this is for you. This is for the person that is tired of being tired, that feels like there's more to be squeezed out of life than they know that it exists. They just don't know how to access it. This is for people that are ready to live a life on purpose. This is for people that are just want to get after their dream and they're tired of the 9 to 5, or they don't know where to go, or they're in transition in life, or they just left their job, or they just left their partner, or whatever it is. I want you to be able to have this as a layout, as a map for you to get after it. This is grounded in principle. This is grounded in potency. This is grounded in medicine that me and Lou been working on since Hawaii, baby. Stemming from The Alchemist, one of the greatest books in the freaking world. This is for you. It's bite-sized video modules where we're not asking you to crush a freaking hour a day at all for a whole year. No, this is condensed 10 to 12 video modules that have actionable steps and thought work for you to get afterwards so that you can change your life in a potent and powerful way. We're doing an early adopter price for the first 111 people at $111. You're gonna wanna get on this because this shit is gonna sell like hotcakes. We got some soul hotcakes for y'all. So if this is you and you're ready to shift your life, you're ready to move your ass, you're done being comfortable in where you're at, you wanna get out of fear, DM me or Lou, personal legend in all caps, as this is for you. Back to the episode. And that last part, becoming conscious and creating the future that we actually want to live. It's just interesting to me, like the concept of the broken will. I did a video, my first video I ever spoke on burnout, I think it was called The Broken Will of the Chiropractic Student. And I talked about how, people are going through chiropractic school, 25, 30 credits, and that's just the way things have always been, or, they need to be, and figure it out. Like, it's because in confusion or in isolation, in defensiveness, we can isolate ourselves. Because then it's about me surviving versus me and you surviving together. Like, that's not something that's on the table, when that's actually at the nature of being a human, and that's how we got here. So it's like, in the modern day expression of fear or confusion or trying to navigate things, there's a separation which then allows, I think, for the perpetuation or the allowing of continued divide and conquer.
Yes, that's really well put. I have to think about that because there's a lot to what you just said. And, to bring that back to our previous point about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think there's one thing that Maslow didn't talk about that I think is true of that, which is the basic underlying need, even below basic human needs, is connection. Connection is the basic human need. And one of the reasons that's true, among other things, is that we as human beings need one another. We're social animals. We need to have the tribe so that we can go out and hunt and get our food and bring it back to the village with the other people that are doing the other work, like repairing the houses or making the baskets or whatever it is. It's like, that's how the human animal functions.
Yes.
So there is no meeting our other, basic physical needs even without one another. Connection is the basic human need.
And I just think about the importance of it. Because you can zoom out micro to macro, whatever organization, whatever family. You can, example A, if connection is the basic human need, who's in your immediate circle, who's in your immediate nucleus, then you zoom out, who's in your family or who's in your work life, who are you interacting on the day-to-day. Zoom out to your profession, or zoom out to your building, your hospital, your clinic. Who are you operating with on the day-to-day, and how are you honoring those needs of connection, and what are your sensitivities to those? And then zoom out to then maybe your city or your community or your state, and then you continue to micro things out. But it's like there's so many disconnections at all of those different rungs. I feel really blessed. I feel super connected to our team as the Source, and that we have this community. And then then there's zoom out potential friends in university or potential friends that are in the program, and zoom deeper in. Well, then there's the needs of like friendship that came from Connecticut and came from CCSU. So it's like all these different paths and phases of life, and you can re-examine them all and be able to ask yourself, what is my layer of connection, and what is my need for connection in that capacity? And I imagine that could lead to a more parasympathetic or a more relaxed state of being, where you can think about, because in the need for a connection or basic need for human connection, you're tapping into, I think, our biggest resource, which is our relationships. As Brett and Daniel have said, DiPiazza, relationships are the currency of this time.
Fully agree. And I'm so grateful for those connections too. Like, my friends have always been like the rock for me in my life. And, to meet people like yourself and our other friends at the Source, the other people we know, I'm so grateful for that, because that is really the most empowering thing I think we have, is that currency of relationships. And I'll add this to it too.
Do it.
So we're talking about that topic of fear. Speaking from personal experience, there is no fear or anxiety that I've ever had that's been made worse by having connection to other people. Having connection to other people is the best way to approach the challenges in life. Because the thing is when so much of, I think, the fear and anxiety is exacerbated and made worse when we feel like we approach it alone. Whether it's financial or related to people's schooling or related to people's challenges in life or with their family, the more we approach like the iceberg of potential destruction alone and feel that there's no one else there that's going to approach those problems with us to seek challenges, find solutions, that is that experience of internal mental hell. it's the moment we find other people that are willing to meet the challenge with us is the moment that fear or anxiety turns into action. It turns into something that we can collectively transform. You want to talk about the mechanisms that break people down? They make people alone. They make people afraid. We can't face our fears alone. Not in the same way that we can when we're dealing with these high social level problems and things that are affecting all of us. Nobody can fix all of that by ourselves.
Yeah, as I've heard the saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah.
And I think about, and I only offer that because if we're able to see what are the human struggles that we're going through, and then what's the root cause of those human struggles, and we don't need to necessarily make it an enemy, but if we're able to get collective eyes on it, then we can constructively work together in our relationship and then ultimately shift our environment. As I think our environment is everything. Our environment determines what cancer genes turn on or not, what genes turn on in our body. Our perception of our environment is important in that capacity as well. So if we can work on the environment and our perception of the environment, well, then I think that's where we really get to win, because when it comes to predisposing people to burnout, if they have a broken will already, that they're predisposed to burnout, of course, but the environment is everything, because it's our relationship to the environment that will then either allow us to thrive or allow us to just stay in a state of survival when it comes to burnout and navigating what it means to be a healthcare practitioner, because there's the workload that you got to consider, there's the community you got to consider, there's the resources available that you got to consider, there's the purpose that's driving you that you got to consider. But these are just a few of these 6 elements of what goes into the workout or the work environment and the relationship to it. Because even in the work environment, there's a work environment, then there's a human environment. So if you're not in a nourishing environment with work, well, then you damn sure better well that your human environment or your life outside of your identity as a healthcare professional is thriving and set up for that.
It's so important. It's so important. And, it's challenging in a lot of ways. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. Again, it's like, what else are we going to do? It's like we're here together. We have to face that challenge in some way. And I know you mentioned purpose, and that was going to be one of the things that we were talking about today, one of the themes for this conversation. So you want to dive into that a little bit?
Yeah. I think that loss of purpose, once more, if you don't got any fuel in your tank, I think we've covered a good amount of ground already, but if you don't got any fuel in your tank, your car's not going to go anywhere that you want it to go. Yes. Or it's getting fuel from other aspects of sorts. What I'm calling forth is just a demanding of yourself and of your people to move with intention. Move with a solid recognition and ground of why you're doing what you're doing. That can be based in your values. And if they're based in your values or your non-negotiables, well, I imagine that's going to be those are great elements to making your fuel, your fire fuel, your sexy ass fuel, to what's going to pull you through, what's going to push you through, whatever it is that you need to do. But if you're sacrificing these basic elements to your fuel, well, and I imagine that's going to dilute or that's going to water down how far you can go and how deep you can travel.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's essential to have that. We have to have some kind of basic principles that will drive us forward, because at the point where someone meets all the challenges in this walk, what's going to carry a person through? And I remember, that's been the case in my life, right? Like every time I've been through things, that was like walking through hell. I've been in moments in my life where there was no pleasure, there was no joy, there was nothing that I was waking up to want to look forward to. What carried me through was that sense of purpose. And sometimes it was abstract. Being a highly spiritual person myself, I believe that the Spirit guides, Great Spirit, has a plan for me here. Or not really even to put it in those words so much, but that there is a purpose for my life, and that if I follow my intuition and follow my heart, it will unfold. I always believe that. Gradually, I come to see more pieces of that picture and more things I want to follow. It's like, create this thing. I used to work on gaming projects. It's like, make this game, see how many people that affects. Next thing you know, that leads to something else. And we had talked about previously to this conversation, the aspect that if a person doesn't know their big purpose in life, and I meet a lot of people who say this, it's a lot of young people especially will tell me, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what the point of this whole journey is. Sometimes it's so large that it's like, how can a person possibly see that, right? So if you can't figure out the big purpose, figure out the little purpose. That's why I came up with this exercise and question, and you can write it down. Say it to yourself. The sentence, what is the most important thing for me today? Blank. The most important thing for me today is blank. That's your purpose for today. Tomorrow might be something different. In a year, it might be something more vast. But if you know what it is that you're doing today, you have a purpose. And I think the thing is, too, is like make a statement about it. Because we're living in a world, again, this confusing modern world, where now it's like it's hip, it's popular to not give a damn about anything. And it's like this idea of, well, life has no meaning, everything is absurd, everything is random and meaningless is in many ways this poison that has been interjected into so much of the media, so much of the dialogue, that it's now like, it's cool to go through life and feel like, well, there's no purpose. That's all part of the structures that are being passed down to break down people's minds. So it's like if there's a rebellion in awareness and consciousness, is like make a statement about something that matters to you.
What's that mean to you, make a statement?
Well, I think even simply just to say like, well, this matters to me today. And, you know, you can make a statement in the sense of like saying it to other people too, or going forward in life and carrying through your principles and values and your actions. Like that's a bigger statement. But even just to yourself, like when you're alone, just saying the words like, this matters to me. That is in and of itself in alignment with this aspect of purpose and meaning.
I think in giving yourself grace and just focusing on what's most important for me today, I think that's one of the biggest things that someone can do to help shift things. Because even if they're getting their shit stomped, or you know they're in a tough place, man, just what's my purpose for this next hour? What's my purpose for this morning? Like, what's most important? Because what's most important to you is a reflection of your needs.
Yes.
Unconscious and conscious. And in the fulfilling of insert thing here, that can give you step, that can give you momentum, that can give you fuel, that can give you trust, that can give you insight, that can give you a lesson, that can give you faith, that can give you gratitude. It can give you so many different things that then can give you permission, energy, gas, fuel to just make it to the afternoon. Because it's hard being in that space. This isn't easy, and this is so common, however. Mm-hmm. So if you can summon the will to figure and work through this aspect of life, you're unlocking a part of your medicine in those that are around you, and how you can demonstrate for them. You don't need to teach them, but share with them in your energy. What can you do, and how that there's, I'll just say there's hope.
Yes. That's also important. It's so important because there's so many people that don't have that right now. And you know, there's this word that we used to talk about, this philosophy that I think has become the poison that's interjected into the modern world, which is nihilism. Nihilism is this belief that nothing has meaning, everything is pointless. It's like, what's the point of anything? Nihilism is the poison of the modern world. That word, nihilism, comes from nothing, nothingness. Now, when we look at nothingness, this is maybe getting into something very esoteric, there's a void. Is it a void that's alive, or is it a void that's dead? Because if it's a void that's alive, and a space that's alive, anything is possible from that. This universe is a living universe. We're proof of that. We are proof of the intelligent life. that we can only imagine exists far and above outside of everything else we know here on this planet. And so, what choice do we make when it comes to looking into the mystery of that life? Do you choose to look at that as it has something of a sense of purpose and value inherently? Or do you look at it as something chaotic and random and pointless? A lot of what we're being told right now by the modern world is to look at it as something that is chaotic and random and pointless. And this is kind of what's ended up happening is first people look at the universe that way, at nature as being this chaotic thing. And then people look at human society as being something that has no point and purpose. And then people look at their lives as being something that has no point and purpose, that everything is just absurd. And what a life like that looks like is a person that goes around, has no sense of purpose. And I would hypothesize that that person has a broken will.
Yes.
The reason that the power structures of the world want people to be that way is because they will not be empowered in that state. And it's very easy to sell things to people that have no sense of purpose and meaning. Simple reason why is because when people don't pursue meaningful things in their life, they will simply pursue what their next easiest pleasure is as a substitute. And it's very easy to understand in psychology and marketing what people's simple pleasure is that you can sell them. It's like, oh, okay, well, this person likes cigarettes. It's like, okay, well, sell them the next cigarette. It's like this person likes, this type of book. It's like, okay, sell them that book. There is an economic machine that profits from and essentially consumes humanity by virtue of keeping people in a place of nihilistic lack. And I think when people embrace that sense of meaning and purpose, they start to flourish not only in their lives, but they become unpredictable to that machine. You can't sell people something who they have a strong center and compass in their life. They know what they're about.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and I think what's most important here is just the rendition of, as I've talked with Lou a number of times on purpose, and I feel like a lot of conversations on this, but I feel like this just gives a really good opportunity for people to, just reevaluate things and have a tool to, one thing, it's like, what's my purpose for today? What's most important for me today? So you can begin to build the construct or the stair steps. You got to build the stairs out of this basement, out of this dark space, and just focus on taking just that one step so that way you can be able to ascend and go where you need to go and experience more life per moment.
Yeah, I think that's a valuable process because anybody can start that process wherever they're at, right?
Wherever they're at.
There's always a small step. There's always something that's going to be important for someone to do today. And that important thing might be rest. That important thing might be, got to take care of myself or my health or go do my gym workout, whatever it is. It's like, it's okay to have a purpose or a goal that is small. Sometimes it's the small goals that are the big goals too. I mean, you ever notice that?
That's good. The small goals are what give momentum to the big goals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even just, let me just get through this next hour.
Absolutely.
I think the quote is that I've heard before is goals are the oxygen to your dreams.
Ooh, that's interesting. I never heard that one before.
Yeah, goals are the oxygen to your dreams. I heard that in South Africa when I was at a conference for chiropractic students who were the leaders at their schools. And I think it just helps because one of the keystones to happiness is progress.
Yes.
And if people see that they're able to progress, that can just be the kindling, the spark to allow their inferno or their fire to just grow more inside themselves.
Yes. And it all starts in the mind. Because this reality unfolds from a more subtle place. So the mind leads the way in terms of our actions, which then go forward and affect the world and bring things into existence. That's maybe the least woo-woo esoteric way to put that.
Sure.
So it's like when we navigate those spaces inside the mind and construct our being in a certain way in our internal life, everything else in our external life follows from that. And so it's like small goals. What do you need to build inside yourself today?
I even add a mirror to that. What do you need to remove from your life today?
Yeah, absolutely. Those can also be important things to do.
Perception, and the key is you.
Yes. There's something for everybody in this. This is the thing too that I think people get tripped up on in the modern world, is that we've created like this sense of social value hierarchy, right? That there's certain things that are supposed to be more valuable than other things. Whether that's jobs or cars or anything else, that we have such a sophisticated, complicated value structure. The thing is, though, is spiritually, I find, and cosmically, whatever your goals are that are important for you, those are the valuable goals. So it's like, sometimes I feel I have conversations with people, and anytime I mention things like purpose and goals, they immediately think that it has to be something grandiose. And it's like, well, not necessarily. Maybe the important goal for a person is to spend time with their child.
Yeah.
And, read a book to their child that night after school. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's what you're saying. The little things can be the big things. That might be, cosmically speaking, that person's highest fulfillment for that day.
Everything.
Yeah, and other people, it might be, teaching at a chiropractic seminar, which I believe you did recently.
Yes, I did.
Oh, awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's different things for different people. And I think too, it's important to not get caught up in some kind of like social value evaluation of like what goals are worth more than what other goals, because it's entirely irrelevant. It's entirely irrelevant. That's part of the machine that keeps people trapped from doing the next right thing for themselves, is that they think that it has to be something that's, in the image of success that has been passed down to us via media and social channels. Mm-hmm. It's not. What is your success for today?
What is your success for today? No matter how big, no matter how small, quote unquote, there is no size comparison. It just is.
Yeah.
It just is.
That's the way I see it.
Because I think in the acceptance of this just is, there is a relinquishing of judgment, comparison, anything outside in, because it's just like, this is what's alive inside me and what I need to do today. And I'm going to do that.
Absolutely. Because that life within you is the realest thing you could possibly know. So much of the rest of it is illusion. All the social value structures, the confusion, the postmodernism, it's all a big illusion. The economy is one big illusion. This society is based on lies. People don't want to talk about it that way. It's like the life that you have inside yourself, the aspirations, the desires, the connections. That's the real shit right there.
Yeah, the realist. I think one last question, as I'm feeling complete. What does real mean to you?
Oh, I love this question. This is like the thing I think about all day long.
Sweet.
Reality. I like asking people, what is reality? Because I think it's the one thing that so many people go about life and they assume they know what it is. They've never thought about it before. What is real to me is anything that the consciousness gets to experience. Because, 400 or 500 years ago, there's this famous philosopher, Rene Descartes. It's a lot of modern thinking, even scientific thinking comes from that man. And one of the things that he says that was, This very famous quote is the "I think, therefore I am." It's that idea. But if I were to retranslate that in my own idea, it's I am conscious, therefore I experience reality. It's because the consciousness is the living awareness. It's like, I see you right now. I might not know the configuration of every atom in your body or what the course of your life or day is going to be, but I know I see you. And so I know that I am alive right now and that I'm aware of you. And I believe that there is life that flows within both of us and between us. And it's that experience is real. So it's like, if you want to get in touch with reality, get in touch with your experiences. Because so much of the illusion is in telling people what is real, right? Like people like, well, going to work, paying my bills and the mortgage and like the school and the grades and the promotion and the brands of my clothes. It's like, that's all real stuff, right? That's a big illusion. Most of it. Now, the illusion affects reality, and reality has created the illusion. So there's a relationship between the two, and the illusion exists for the purpose of influencing people's reality, their real lives, because the consciousness of a human being becomes channeled in all these avenues and all these directions, right? They get involved with the job and the school and the whatever else. The thing is, though, is that the fundamental reality is that you are a living being between birth and death. And there are many breaths and many cycles. There are many moments that you'll get to spend, and you don't know how many there are. But as long as you're here, and as long as you are experiencing something, you know that you are alive, and that you will have opportunity upon opportunity to expand that experience into various things and to see what it's all about.
For you, I see reality as almost like the playground or the landscape in all realms, shapes, and forms, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And I love the idea of the consciousness experiencing life, or the universe experiencing itself. And with an illusion, that can be a certain room or drapes or aspect and way of participating in life. But reality just is. And at the same time, it's whatever we make of it while it's making of ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's like, I see it once more. I just see this video game. We get to play all up in it. We get to make some of the rules to it, as there's principles and things and how we navigate it, which is quantum physics.
Yes, there are some hacks and cheats.
There are some hacks and cheats. Yeah, it's like, so, and maybe it's not a hack, maybe it's not a cheat, because it's something that everyone can access if they're open and ready for it.
Yes,
and they have the perspective of it. But what is true is that we get to add into this cumulative reality and play to it. And the power in that is that you get to add to it, and the recognition that you get to add to it. And what are you adding to it? You're adding your energy and your expression. So being able to give yourself permission to be a participant once more, full circle, will allow life to continue to happen for you and through you.
Isn't that such a beautiful thing?
Yes.
We're a part of something so much bigger than ourselves. And that can get lost in all the types of illusions we're talking about, and in the nihilism. But I mean, you go out there on a night and you look at the stars in the sky, or go out into the wilderness, go into the mountains or the woods. It's like very quickly the illusion starts to disappear. Because I don't think it's possible to look at all of that and the vastness of that and to still like latch on to this nihilistic meaning that there's just nothing to anything.
Yeah.
Because we're here as a part of that.
Yeah.
We didn't like construct that as some conceptual like
thing,
postmodern falsehood. That's alive. Like, that's real. That shit is real in the night sky. Millions and billions, trillions, maybe, stars. Who knows how many planets out there? we are a part of the vastness of all that. We are life held within all that. Like, that is incredible. So it's like even just sitting in the mystery of that, because we can talk about ideas about what that means and spiritual philosophies and such, but just like even just saturate in the mystery of all that for just a moment. How could there be any lack of purpose or meaning in a world where nature works in such beautiful and in magnificent ways?
Poetic. Love that. The concept that nature can help dissolve the illusion. Mm-hmm. As nature just is.
Right, yeah.
Nature is reality.
There might be beings greater than us that are laughing at all these funny illusions we're making.
Right.
Maybe it's like a movie, comedy, perhaps.
It's comedy for somebody. It's got to be.
Yeah.
Oh, this is good. Right. How can our people connect to you, outside of this podcast?
Absolutely. Well, if you are in Tucson, Arizona, you're looking for acupuncture and Asian medicine services, like Dr. Jamal said, I am at the Source Tucson. I can be found in Tucson, Arizona. However, if you're around the country, you want to follow more of my content, I have a YouTube channel, Ray Hillsman on YouTube. I just uploaded my first serious video recently about how to shamanic journey. Mm-hmm. So this is a topic I want to take going forward in the future of introducing this ancient meditation art of how to journey into the inner world, see things, hear things, feel things, and really how to journey through the cosmos. So we have an inner universe within us. It's a mirror of the outer universe. Okay, so I put it on my first video about how to implement some of these things. There's step-by-step guidance for anybody who's a beginner to begin to experience these tools, and I would like to upload more of those type of things. So if anybody's interested, that's Ray Hillsman on YouTube.
Down. Beautiful. And is there anything else you'd love to impart to our listeners today?
I'd say hang in there. The world's a challenging place right now. And I'm not one to pretend like I'm not about the illusion, if nobody can tell from this conversation. We are working out something different for humanity. This is a time of collapse. Every empire in history has collapsed. And so I understand there's a tremendous degree of fear. There's a tremendous degree of grief. So everything I say, I want to be in acknowledgement of that and of the many serious things that people are going through, many of which we see in our clinical practice. So I want to say in some sense that I hear you. Those of you that I see and those of you that I see on the streets, even passing by, I get a vibe of where human beings are at. And this is a challenging time for a lot of people. So let's go forward and create. And let's create with that sense of, like you said, intention. We're talking about awareness, a sense of purpose. Because this time has tremendous opportunity to create a better way of life for human beings. Personally, I feel, if I'm being honest, my purpose on this planet is to help facilitate the unfolding of awareness so that we can create a better way for humanity. We got to hold to that. We got to hold to that belief and carry that fire forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Last thing for you, sir. Yeah. How would you describe your flavor of soul coffee?
Am I supposed to get poetic with this?
Whatever you want.
My flavor of soul coffee.
Yeah. How would you describe your essence of you?
Bitter and dark.
Sounds great.
I'm not afraid of the bitter flavor, although I do like sweet.
Sure.
Shake it up sometime, put a little honey in there, a little cream, something like that. But I would say dark, if I'm being very honest, because I think there's a lot of there's a lot of brightness. I think of you as having at least an aspect of bright, generous energy. I love that about you. There's a yin yang to everything in the universe.
Sure.
I think of myself as being on the kind of the dark side, a reflective pool. You can gaze into water, dark water, for a long, long ways and see a lot of things. And so I bring a little bit of that to the world. And it's a little bit of contrast. And so I talk about serious things, talk about dark things. So I'd say, give me that soul coffee as black as you can.
Let's go. Ain't nothing wrong with dark, because that's where we all come from anyway.
Yes. Very true.
So thank you, brother. Y'all, please reach out to Ray, as we call him Gandalf at the office, as well, as he's a wizard, quite literally. Thank you for tuning to another episode of Soul Coffee. Please check out the show notes. Join the Telegram group that I finally figured out. Hey, as I'm excited to pour into y'all and be able to construct a newsletter and be able to just nourish y'all at the beginning of the week and the end of the week. And if you have any feedback or ideas for me, please send them my way. I want to be able to nourish and grow this community, as September is going to be our biggest month yet in Soul Coffee. We got about 10 interviews I'm going to drop, and I'm just really, really freaking stoked. So as always, y'all, I'll see you next time. Peace.